What if I told you that working 80 hours a week is, well, mathematically guaranteed to keep you poor?
Or, at the very least, it's mathematically guaranteed to keep you from ever actually becoming wealthy.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because, I mean, you enter adulthood, and almost immediately society hands you this very specific script, right?
That's a standard roadmap.
Yeah. The roadmap: go to school, get a specialized degree, find a secure job, climb the corporate ladder, save like 10% of your paycheck in an index fund.
And just pray that by the time you're 65, your knees still work well enough to let you enjoy it.
Exactly. Enjoy whatever time you have left. And we accept this script because, well, it's really the only one we're given.
Yeah, nobody tells you there's an alternative.
Right. But every once in a while, you stumble across a collection of ideas that feels less like a conventional roadmap and more like I don't know, like a glitch in the matrix.
A cheat code.
Yes, a cheat code, a totally different rule book for how the game of life and wealth and autonomy is played by people who just seem to have completely bypassed the traditional grind.
They're playing a completely different game.
They really are. So welcome to today's deep dive. We are unpacking what is essentially a modern operating manual for navigating success and, honestly, the mechanics of the human mind.
Yeah, it's a profound text.
We're diving into a comprehensive summary of the Almanack of Naval Ravikant. Now, the source material itself is a bit of an anomaly, isn't it?
Oh, totally. Because Naval didn't, lock himself in a cabin for 2 years to write a traditional book.
Right.
A guy named Eric Jorgensen essentially acts as a DJ here. He's sampling and mixing this vast array of Naval's interviews, his podcast appearances, and his infamous hyperdense threads on social media.
Those threads are legendary.
They really are. And Jorgensen distills years of that philosophy into one highly concentrated dose.
It's a totally unique format.
It is. And I think it perfectly mirrors the central, rather radical premise that ties all this together.
Which is what, exactly?
So the entire text operates on one foundational assertion. Wealth and happiness are not accidents of birth. They are not strokes of genetic luck, and they certainly aren't like mystical states of being bestowed upon a fortunate few by some benevolent universe.
So what are they?
They are highly learnable skills. They're essentially engineering problems.
Wow.
Yeah. The text argues that just like learning to write a piece of software or learning to speak Mandarin, you can study the underlying mechanics of wealth generation.
You could just learn it.
Exactly. You can study the neurobiology and psychology of happiness, and you can literally train yourself to execute them.
That's a massive promise.
It is. If you internalize these principles, the implication is that you permanently alter the trajectory of your life, regardless of where you are starting from today.
Okay, let's unpack this because, I mean, if wealth and happiness are just mechanical skills we can learn, I think you, listening to this right now, are probably wondering the exact same thing I am.
Why wasn't this a required class in high school?
Literally. Why on earth didn't anyone teach us this? But before we get to the happiness part, which is a really sharp turn we're definitely going to explore later, we have to start where the text starts.
We have to define our terms.
Right. We need to look at what might be the single most misunderstood economic concept in our entire culture.
The difference between wealth and money.
Yes. The text explicitly states that you should seek wealth, not money.
Mm-hmm.
And understanding this distinction is the absolute prerequisite for everything else we're going to talk about today.
It's the foundation.
So let's visualize this for you guys listening. Think about it like this. Money is just the ticket stub.
I like that.
Yeah, it's the piece of paper or, the digital ledger that says you have the right to enter the amusement park and maybe buy a churro.
Right. It's a medium of exchange.
Exactly. But wealth. Wealth is owning the amusement park. Wealth is the roller coasters running, the turnstile spinning, the cotton candy being sold.
The machinery is just operating.
Yes, operating at full capacity, regardless of whether you are physically standing there watching it happen.
Because the text defines wealth specifically as assets that earn while you sleep.
Assets that earn while you sleep.
Ah.
But I have to stop right here, because society tells us a very, very different story.
Oh, completely.
We are relentlessly conditioned to view the world through the lens of a zero-sum game.
Yes.
Like the prevailing narrative on the news and in our culture is that if someone gets rich, someone else had to lose. If I take a big slice of the pie, your slice inherently gets smaller.
That's the default assumption most people have.
So how does this text dismantle that zero-sum worldview? Because, I mean, if I'm building an amusement park, didn't I have to take land and resources from someone else to do it?
What's fascinating here is how the text completely reorients our understanding of value creation. It attacks that exact zero-sum fallacy head-on.
Yep.
Because you have to understand, our brains are actually evolved for a strict zero-sum environment.
Like biologically.
Biologically. If we are in a hunter-gatherer tribe on the savannah, and I take the only apple on the tree, you literally go hungry.
Right. I lose out.
That is a true zero-sum game. Status is also a zero-sum game, right? For someone to be the leader of the tribe, someone else has to be pushed down the hierarchy.
There can only be one chief.
Exactly. And we carry that evolutionary baggage right into the modern world. But the text makes a critical distinction. Wealth creation in a modern technological economy is fundamentally not a zero-sum game.
It's not.
It is a positive-sum game. When you create value for society, when you build a new product or write a piece of software or invent a new medical device, you are not just taking an existing pie and demanding a larger slice.
You're baking an entirely new pie.
You're baking a new pie. You are expanding the total amount of resources, utility, and wealth in the world.
I want to make sure this is crystal clear for everyone listening because it's such a vital mental shift.
It really is.
Let's use a real-world historical example. Think about the invention of the spreadsheet program.
Oh, like VisiCalc.
Yeah, VisiCalc, back in the late 70s. Before that, accountants did everything by hand on giant pieces of grid paper.
It was miserable.
It took days to recalculate a single column if just one number changed. But when the digital spreadsheet was invented, the creators didn't steal time or money from anyone.
No, they didn't.
They created massive new efficiency. The accountants didn't lose their jobs. They were suddenly freed up to do complex financial modeling they never had time for before.
And entirely new industries were born from that.
Exactly. The accountants were happier, their clients got faster results, businesses became more efficient. And because the creators built the tool, they captured a tiny portion of that newly created global value in the form of their own personal wealth.
That is the perfect illustration. Nobody was robbed to make the creators of the spreadsheet wealthy. The world simply became richer.
Right.
And capturing that value for yourself requires a very specific architecture, which goes right back to the text definition, assets that earn while you sleep. This is the ultimate escape philosophy from the traditional economic model. Because from the time we are children, we are taught to rent out our time.
You work for an hour, you get paid for an hour.
Exactly. The problem is, time is strictly finite. You only have 24 hours in a day, you need to sleep for 8 of them, and your energy depletes rapidly.
So there's a hard limit.
A very hard, unyielding ceiling. If your income is directly tied to your physical presence and your active labor, you can only earn so much. Even if you are a highly paid corporate lawyer making $1,000 an hour.
The moment you stop billing, the money stops flowing.
It stops completely. The paradigm shift the text demands is moving away from renting your time and toward owning equity.
Owning a piece of the pie.
Right. Owning a piece of a business, holding intellectual property, creating a product. These are systems that operate completely independently of your physical presence.
It's the difference between being the person turning the crank and being the person who owns the machine. And making that shift requires a heavy psychological rewiring. You have to stop looking at a high hourly wage as the ultimate goal.
Because it's still a trap.
It is. A high hourly wage is still just a treadmill. It's just a treadmill with, gold-plated handrails.
I love that. Gold-plated handrails.
You have to start asking yourself, how do I build a system? How do I build an asset? I mean, look at your own life right now, your own daily routine. Are you currently spending all your mental energy chasing the ticket stub, that biweekly paycheck? Or are you actively laying the bricks to build your own amusement park?
It's a tough question to ask yourself.
It is, but here is where we hit a massive roadblock.
Okay.
If wealth is about building these independent assets, and if renting my time is a trap, the immediate problem is that my time is literally the only thing society's ever taught me how to sell.
Right. It's all we know.
So if I stop selling my time, what do I actually have left to offer the market? How do I figure out what to build?
And that brings us to the engine of the entire philosophy. Specific knowledge.
Specific knowledge. Okay, walk us through this.
So this is where the text gets incredibly personalized. The source material states that wealth is created through a combination of specific knowledge and accountability.
Let's break down specific knowledge first.
Right, because it counters almost everything the traditional education system teaches us. The text defines it as building skills that feel entirely natural and unique to you.
Okay.
It explicitly warns against generic knowledge. Going to university and getting a standardized degree in business administration is general knowledge.
Because everyone learns the same things.
Exactly. If society can train you to do something in a standardized way by putting you through a curriculum and testing you on a rubric, society can train someone else to replace you.
Right.
And if you can be easily replaced, the market will inherently drive your price down to the lowest common denominator.
Supply and demand.
Yes. Specific knowledge, on the other hand, is found at this weird, idiosyncratic intersection of your innate talents, your genuine, obsessive curiosities, and your specific lived experiences.
It's like your intellectual fingerprint.
That's a great way to put it.
You can't just copy-paste it from a syllabus or download it from some corporate training module.
No, you really can't.
But here's the part that always trips people up, and I want to really dig into this. If this specific knowledge is so deeply natural to you, doesn't that mean it probably feels like play?
It does.
But to everyone else, it looks like incredibly hard work. And we are so deeply conditioned by our culture, going all the way back to the Industrial Revolution, to believe that work must involve suffering.
Oh, totally. The no pain, no gain mentality.
Right. If you aren't sweating and miserable, you aren't creating value.
That is the exact paradox the text highlights. And it is the reason why your uniqueness is your ultimate competitive advantage.
How so?
Let's say you have this bizarre, deep-seated obsession with both medieval history and modern data analytics.
A weird combo, but okay.
Right. To anyone else, trying to combine those fields or study them simultaneously would feel like grueling, mind-numbing labor. But to you, it's genuinely fun. It is play.
You just do it on a Saturday for fun.
Exactly. You will spend your weekends reading obscure historical texts and running data models just to see what happens, entirely unprompted. And because it is play to you, you will naturally outwork, outstudy, and outperform anyone who is only doing it because they want a paycheck.
That makes so much sense.
When the market inevitably needs someone who understands the historical context of data trends, who are they going to hire? The person who took a 6-week certification course, or the person who has been obsessing over it for a decade for free?
Obviously the obsessive person.
Exactly. Nobody can compete with you on being you. When you lean into your specific knowledge, you become a monopoly of one.
A monopoly of one. I love that phrase. I'll give you a real-world example of this that completely changed how I view careers.
Oh, I'd love to hear it.
I have a friend who was a decent but not, like, extraordinary software developer, but he was also completely obsessed with acoustic guitar construction.
Yeah.
He knew every type of wood, every frequency vibration, just total nerd-level obsession. And he stopped trying to compete with the thousands of other developers building generic accounting software.
Smart.
Yeah. And he built a highly specific software tool exclusively for boutique guitar makers to model acoustic resonance.
Wow.
He cornered the global market almost instantly. It was play for him, but it was an invaluable asset to his clients.
That is the perfect example of specific knowledge.
But, and the text is very stern about this, having that weird specific knowledge is entirely useless if you don't attach it to the second component.
Accountability.
Accountability, yes.
Accountability is the mechanism that translates your specific knowledge into actual wealth. It is the catalyst.
And we really need to redefine this word, don't we?
We do. Because when people hear accountability, they usually think of, like, a corporate performance review.
Yeah, getting in trouble with your boss.
Exactly. But the text is using it in the context of risk, reward, and skin in the game.
Skin in the game.
Accountability means you are stepping out from the safety of the crowd. You are publicly stating, I am going to apply my specific knowledge to solve this problem. I am making the judgment call on how to do it. And if it fails, the failure is squarely on my shoulders.
That's terrifying for most people.
It is. But the market demands accountability, and it rewards risk-taking with equity. If you are hiding in the background, if you're just an anonymous cog in a middle management tier of a massive corporation, you are highly protected from the downside of failure.
Right. If the company product flops, you still get your salary.
You still get paid.
Yeah.
But because you are protected from the downside, you are also entirely cut off from the upside of spectacular success. You don't capture the value.
You are insulated from the risk, so you are insulated from the reward.
Perfectly said.
The text is basically saying that selling time while hiding under a corporate umbrella is a trap. True ownership, owning the equity, is where the real value is captured. You take the risk of putting your name on the project, but you demand the equity that comes with its success.
Exactly. So it's a triad, really. Judgment, accountability, and ownership.
Judgment, accountability, ownership.
You use your specific knowledge to make a judgment call like, this is the software we need to build, or this is the market we need to attack. You take accountability by putting your reputation on the line. And you demand ownership so that when your judgment proves correct, you reap the disproportionate rewards.
That challenges you to stop hiding. I want you
Yeah.
to think about this as you're listening. What do you do so effortlessly that others find it difficult? What is your weird obsession?
Yeah.
And more importantly, are you taking accountability for it? Or are you hiding it while you work a safe, standardized job because you're afraid of the downside?
It's a really confronting question.
It is. But let's keep building this architecture, because even if you have identified your specific knowledge, and even if you are bravely taking accountability for it,
Mm-hmm.
you hit another wall.
The physical limit.
Yes. You are still limited by your own physical reality. You only have two hands, you only have so much energy, and there are only 24 hours in a day. So how do you break the physical limits of time and space?
To do that, the text introduces the engine block of this whole philosophy: leverage.
Leverage.
Leverage is what takes your specific knowledge and multiplies its impact from a local scale to a global scale. Without leverage, you are just a highly skilled craftsman. With leverage, you build an empire.
Okay, let's get into the mechanics of that.
The text identifies 4 distinct forms of leverage, and it divides them into 2 eras: the old forms, which are capital and systems, and the new forms, which are code and media.
Let's re-examine our metaphor here. We used to talk about a fulcrum and a lever moving a boulder, right? It's a big cliche. Let's look at this through the lens of a nightclub to understand the mechanics of what the text calls permissioned versus permissionless leverage.
I like this.
Capital and systems, meaning money and human labor, are the old forms of leverage. They are the bouncers at the front door of the nightclub. If you want to use them, you have to convince someone to let you in.
Exactly. Let's say you want to build a massive manufacturing enterprise 50 years ago. Your specific knowledge is designing great shoes. To scale that, you need a factory. That requires capital.
Money.
Right. You have to go to investors, pitch them, and beg for their permission to use their money.
The bouncer has to let you in.
Right. And once you have the money, you need labor. You have to hire hundreds of factory workers, convince them to work for you, manage their schedules, deal with human resources, and manage the incredibly complex friction of human dynamics.
It sounds exhausting.
It is. Capital and labor are permissioned leverage. Someone has to say yes before you can use them. They are effective, but they are incredibly difficult to acquire and manage. You spend half your time just managing the leverage itself rather than applying your specific knowledge.
But then the text points out that in the last 30 years, humanity has invented something completely unprecedented: code and media.
The new forms of leverage.
Podcasts, videos, essays, software, algorithms. These are permissionless leverage. This is the back door to the nightclub that you built yourself with your own tools. You own the key.
Yes.
You do not need anyone's permission to learn how to write code. You do not need a venture capitalist to fund your laptop. You don't need a broadcasting executive to give you permission to record a podcast or write a deep dive like the one we are doing right now.
Correctly.
You can sit in your bedroom, apply your specific knowledge, and hit publish, and suddenly your idea is accessible to 4 billion people on the internet.
This is the defining characteristic of the modern economic era, and it's why the text emphasizes it so heavily. Leveraging technology in this way allows you to completely decouple your inputs from your outputs.
Hold on, let's stop and really look at that concept. Decoupling inputs from outputs, because that breaks the fundamental law of labor we are all taught.
It really does.
If I am digging a ditch, my input is 1 hour of shoveling, and my output is 1 foot of ditch. It is a 1-to-1 linear ratio. Input equals output. Even if I'm the fastest shoveler in the world, I can only dig so much. So how exactly do code and media break that law?
They break it because the marginal cost of reproduction is 0.
Meaning what?
Meaning, if you spend 6 months writing a brilliant piece of software, that is your input. It requires intense focus, specific knowledge, and accountability. But once that code is written and deployed, the output becomes infinite.
Infinite.
Yes, that software can serve 1 customer, or it can serve 100 million customers. Serving the 100 millionth customer requires exactly 0 additional effort from you. The servers handle it.
Wow.
The code works for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It doesn't ask for a salary, it doesn't unionize, it doesn't need health insurance, and it doesn't take vacations. This is the exact mechanism of creating assets that earn while you sleep. You build the asset once, and the permissionless leverage distributes it infinitely.
Look at the acquisition of WhatsApp by Facebook. That is the ultimate case study in permissionless leverage.
Oh, absolutely.
When Facebook bought WhatsApp for $19 billion, WhatsApp had roughly 50 employees. 50 people.
It's mind-boggling.
In the era of capital and labor, building a $19 billion communications infrastructure would have required hundreds of thousands of employees, massive physical factories laying copper wire across oceans.
Right. The old permissioned leverage.
But through the permissionless leverage of code, a tiny team with highly specific knowledge built an asset that served a billion users. It is almost like you are cloning yourself. You are creating digital robots that go out into the world and deliver your specific knowledge simultaneously to anyone who wants it.
That's exactly what it is.
So you find your specific knowledge, you take accountability, you build an asset, and you apply a massive multiplier, like code or media. I mean, it sounds like a guaranteed recipe for overnight success. Just hit publish and wait for the billions to roll in.
Right. And that is exactly where the text throws a bucket of ice water on the reader.
Here's the catch.
Because building specific knowledge and deploying profound leverage is not a weekend project. It isn't a get-rich-quick scheme. It requires a highly disciplined, almost counterintuitive relationship with time.
Time horizons.
Yes. And that brings us to the physics of success, outlined in the source material. Compounding.
Compounding. We usually only hear this word when a financial advisor is trying to sell us a mutual fund.
Right. Compound interest.
We all know the basic math of compound interest in a retirement account. You invest a little bit of money, the interest earns interest, and for 20 years it looks like nothing is happening. Then, in year 25, the growth curve goes completely vertical.
It skyrockets.
But the text insists that compounding is a universal law that applies far beyond just money in a bank. It insists that compounding works in business, it works in relationships, and it works in learning. And therefore, the core directive is that you must think long-term and make decisions that work over extremely long time horizons. But I want to prompt you on this, because it's abstract. I understand how a dollar compounds. How does compounding actually apply to a relationship? What is the mechanism there?
The mechanism is trust. And trust is arguably the most powerful compounding asset in human interaction.
Trust. Okay.
Let's look at game theory, specifically the iterated prisoner's dilemma. If you only play a game with someone once, the math actually suggests you should betray them to get the maximum immediate reward.
Because there are no consequences later.
Exactly. There are no future consequences. That is a short-term game. But if you play the game with the same person repeatedly over years, an iterated game, the math completely flips. The optimal strategy becomes cooperation.
Wow. Okay.
Think about a business relationship in the real world. The first time you do a deal with someone, trust is at zero. There is immense friction. You have to draft massive contracts, hire lawyers to review every clause, verify every single claim, and monitor the execution constantly.
Yeah, it's exhausting.
It takes a huge amount of energy and time just to manage the friction. But if you play a long-term game and you consistently act with integrity, something shifts. 5 years later, you don't need the lawyers for every minor detail.
The trust is built up.
Right. 10 years later, you can execute a multi-million-dollar partnership with a single phone call or a handshake. The friction goes to near zero, and the speed of execution goes to light speed. That is the compounding effect of trust.
That makes so much sense. Trust reduces friction, which accelerates velocity.
Precisely.
And this perfectly exposes the devastating cost of short-term thinking. I'll give you a painful example from early in my own career.
It should be good.
Yeah, it hurts to admit. I had a client, and I saw an opportunity to upcharge them on a project for a quick, significant profit. It wasn't strictly illegal, but it was ethically gray, and it definitely wasn't in their best interest.
Oh, no.
I took the short-term cash. They eventually found out, and not only did I lose them as a client forever, but they told 3 other major players in the industry. I got a temporary spike in my bank account, but I completely nuked my compounding curve.
You reset it to zero.
I reset my compounding clock on trust back to zero. And the ripple effect cost me infinitely more over the next 5 years than that one quick paycheck.
That's a perfect example.
If we connect this to the bigger picture we've been building, you can have the most unique, specific knowledge in the world, and you can have access to massive permissionless leverage. But it is entirely useless if people do not trust you enough to let you wield it.
Exactly.
If nobody trusts your judgment, nobody will fund your code, nobody will consume your media, and nobody will partner with your systems.
The mathematics of compounding require uninterrupted time to perform their magic. Any breach of trust, any loss of reputation is a catastrophic interruption to that mathematical curve.
It's fragile.
Very. Warren Buffett famously says it takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. That is the vulnerability of a compounding asset. And the text applies the same exact logic to the process of learning, too.
How so?
If you learn a fundamental concept today, say the basics of evolutionary biology, it might seem isolated. But next year, when you study microeconomics, you suddenly realize that markets behave exactly like biological ecosystems.
Oh, wow. The knowledge connects.
It connects. Over decades of reading, your framework of knowledge compounds into profound wisdom. You start seeing patterns and solutions that everyone else misses simply because your mental models have been compounding and cross-referencing for years. Charlie Munger calls this building a latticework of mental models.
I love that visual.
But you only get that benefit if you stay in the game and keep learning over a long time horizon.
So it's time for an audit for you listening right now. I want you to look at your own decisions today. Think about the choices you are making, the way you treat a colleague who has less power than you, the shortcuts you might be taking on a project, the things you were choosing to read in your spare time.
Yeah.
Are those choices going to benefit you in a decade? Or are you playing a short-term game that is going to reset your compounding clock to zero?
It's all connected.
To consistently make those incredibly accurate long-term decisions, to know who to trust, what to study, and what to build, you need a flawless internal operating system. You need a way of processing the chaotic, noisy world around you. And this leads directly to the text teachings on how to learn and how to make decisions.
The operating system of the mind is paramount. The source material is adamant that curiosity and lifelong learning are actual superpowers in the modern economy. But it is very specific about how to learn.
Because we are drowning in information.
We're drowning in a sea of information, but we are starving for actual wisdom. The directive from the text is to read widely, but to focus heavily on foundational books. You must learn how to think, rather than what to think.
I want to highlight the contrast here, because it's the difference between eating junk food and eating protein. Think about waking up and doom-scrolling the daily news on your phone.
We all do it.
We do. But the news is explicitly telling you what to think. It's giving you the outrage of the day, the fleeting data points, the political gossip that will be completely irrelevant by next Tuesday.
It's empty calories.
Exactly. It doesn't build any structural knowledge. But foundational books, mathematics, evolutionary biology, physics, classic philosophy, microeconomics, these books don't tell you what to think about today's headlines. They give you the mental software to process any headline.
Right. They teach you the underlying rules of reality.
So how do we actually apply that software?
The ultimate execution of that mental software, as defined by the text, is first principles thinking.
First principles thinking.
Yes. This is a concept popularized heavily by people like Elon Musk, but it dates back to Aristotle. First principles thinking is the grueling process of taking a complex problem, stripping away all the assumptions, all the analogies, all the societal conventions, and boiling it down to its most fundamental, undeniable physical or logical truths.
Getting down to the bedrock.
Exactly. And once you have those core truths, the first principles, you reason your way up from there. Most people do not do this. Most people reason by analogy.
Like what's always been done this way.
Right. Or our competitor did it like this, so we should too. Reasoning by analogy is safe, it's comfortable, but it guarantees you will only ever iterate slightly on the status quo. You will never create anything truly groundbreaking.
Let's do a live exercise right now to show how this works. Let's take a common assumption that millions of people operate under. I need to work 40 hours a week in an office to be a productive, successful employee.
Oh, this is a great one.
If we reason by analogy, we say, well, my parents did it, my boss does it, it's the standard corporate policy, so it must be true. But if we apply first principles thinking, we strip it down. What is the fundamental truth here?
The fundamental truth is that a business needs a specific output or a specific problem solved. That's it.
Exactly. It doesn't actually need my physical body in a chair for 40 hours. If my specific knowledge allows me to write a script that solves the company's data problem in 4 hours, I have delivered the required output.
Right.
The 40-hour work week is an analogy inherited from the Industrial Revolution factory floor, where physical presence was required to run a machine. It is not a fundamental truth of knowledge work.
Not at all.
By breaking it down to the first principle, the company needs an output. You suddenly realize you can negotiate for remote work, asynchronous hours, or even start your own consultancy based purely on deliverables, not time.
That is a brilliant application of it, but we have to acknowledge why people avoid thinking this way. First principles thinking is incredibly difficult, not just intellectually, but emotionally.
Emotionally.
Yes. The text notes that seeking objective truth requires a painful process. You have to ruthlessly strip away your own ego.
Ah, the ego.
Your ego is an evolutionary defense mechanism designed to protect your identity and your status in the tribe. If your identity is tied to a specific belief, say, your identity is tied to being the hardest working person in the office who stays late every night, and suddenly first principles thinking reveals that staying late is actually inefficient and unnecessary, your ego will fight that realization.
Because it feels like an attack on who you are.
Exactly. It will trigger an amygdala hijack in your brain.
Yeah.
You will ignore the new information, you will get angry, and you will protect your ego instead of updating your mental models.
The ego is the ultimate block to learning. Because if your self-worth is tied to being right, you will automatically reject any new information that proves you wrong. And in a world that is changing as rapidly as ours, an inability to update your mental models is literally fatal to your success. We discussed earlier how specific knowledge is constantly evolving. What is a highly leveraged, profitable skill today might be completely automated by AI tomorrow.
That's the reality we live in.
In that kind of volatile environment, the ability to rapidly learn new foundational concepts, drop old assumptions, and pivot without your ego throwing a tantrum is infinitely more valuable than just memorizing a static set of facts. Curiosity isn't just a nice, wholesome trait. The text labels it a superpower because the genuinely curious person naturally adapts.
Right. They dive into a new form of leverage simply because they want to know how it works, not because they are forced to. Independent thinking protects you from following the herd off a cliff.
And that independence is critical when making those long-term compounding decisions. If you are reasoning from first principles and your ego is out of the way, you are vastly more likely to make a decision that will withstand the test of time, rather than a decision driven by momentary panic, social media outrage, or fleeting market trends.
So true.
Okay, so let's take a deep breath and look at the massive architecture we have constructed here. We have redefined wealth as independent assets that earn while we sleep. We've discovered our unique specific knowledge. We have stepped out of the shadows and taken accountability to capture the upside.
We've applied permissionless leverage.
Yes, through code or media to multiply our impact infinitely. We are playing long-term games, letting trust and knowledge compound, and we are using first principles thinking to navigate the noise without our ego getting in the way.
It's a complete system.
By all traditional metrics, we have won. We have conquered the outside world. We have beaten the game of modern capitalism. But right here, the text makes a jarring, almost whiplash-inducing pivot.
Yeah, it really takes a turn.
Because it turns out, success isn't just external. What happens inside the mind once the outside world is conquered? That brings us to the inner game.
This is perhaps the most crucial shift in the entire source material. And it is where Naval's philosophy diverges from almost every other business manual out there.
It's so different.
After providing a literal masterclass on how to accumulate massive external leverage and wealth, the text turns completely inward. It declares that happiness is a skill.
A skill.
Yes. It argues that genuine peace comes from accepting the present moment, ruthlessly reducing unnecessary desires, cultivating deep gratitude, and rigorously avoiding the constant comparison of yourself with others.
Hold on, I have to interrupt this, because this sounds great on like a meditation retreat, but in the context of this deep dive, it feels completely contradictory.
It does feel that way at first.
We just spent the last 45 minutes talking about extreme ambition, building assets, seeking wealth, taking risks, leveraging technology, creating massive impact. We were talking about changing the world and capturing the value. Now the text says we need to reduce our desires and just accept the present moment. Aren't those two philosophies entirely at war with each other?
I can see why you'd think that.
It feels like the text is telling me to be a ruthless, calculating capitalist on Monday and a serene, detached Zen monk on Tuesday. How does this actually survive contact with reality? If I reduce my desires and just accept the present, I'm going to lose my drive, my business will fail, and I won't have the wealth to buy my freedom anyway.
This raises an incredibly important question, and it is the exact tension that trips most people up when they encounter this philosophy.
Yeah.
It appears contradictory until you understand the distinct, separate roles that wealth and happiness play in the human experience.
Okay, separate roles. Explain that.
The text brilliantly resolves this tension by stating a very hard, very blunt truth. Wealth solves your money problems, but it does not and cannot solve your mind problems.
Wow.
Money is a tool for manipulating the external world. It will buy you freedom from financial panic. It will buy you the ability to dictate your own daily schedule. It will buy you out of toxic work environments, but it will not buy you internal peace.
So it's external versus internal.
Exactly. In fact, if you are not deeply self-aware, the exact ambition required to build wealth can become a pathological disease. You become conditioned to constantly live in the future, forever chasing the next milestone, the next launch, the next revenue target.
The moving goalposts.
Exactly. You spend years telling yourself, I will be happy when I hit $10 million. And then you hit it, the dopamine rush lasts for about a week, and your brain immediately says, actually, I need 50 million to be truly secure. The ambition destroys your ability to be happy in the present.
I see the distinction. The wealth is the external shield against the chaos of the world. But happiness is the internal condition of the mind behind the shield.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
And if the internal condition is chaotic, the external shield doesn't matter at all. You could be a billionaire sitting on a mega yacht in the Mediterranean, but if your mind is a prison of anxiety, paranoia, and constant comparison to the billionaire on the slightly larger yacht next to you, you are objectively suffering.
Yes, your experience of reality is misery.
So how do we train this? Because the text frames happiness not as a fleeting emotion, not just the hit of dopamine you get when you eat a good meal or buy a new car, but as a skill.
Just like writing Python code or lifting weights.
It's something you have to actively practice and condition. So how do we do it?
The core of that practice involves a radical restructuring of how you view your own desires. The text defines peace as the absence of desire. It frames desire as a contract.
A contract.
Every single time you desire something you don't currently have, you are essentially making a subconscious contract with yourself to be unhappy until you get it.
Oh, wow.
We are biologically wired by evolution to be dissatisfied. If an early human was perfectly content sitting under a tree, they eventually starved or got eaten by a tiger. Dissatisfaction kept us alive.
So it's another biological trap.
Yes. But in the modern world, that biological drive is weaponized against us. We are bombarded by advertising and social media that constantly artificially inflate our desires. I need the better car, I need the bigger house, I need the higher status.
It's endless.
It is. The text suggests that reducing unnecessary desires is actually a profound form of mental leverage. Think about it mathematically. Your level of wealth is a ratio of what you have divided by what you desire.
Okay. What you have over what you desire.
Right. You can try to increase the top number, what you have, by working yourself to the bone for decades. Or you can decrease the bottom number, what you desire. If you can train yourself to genuinely need less to be completely satisfied, you instantly, fundamentally make yourself richer.
That is an incredible way to frame it. Reducing desire is mental leverage. It's so much easier to cut a desire than it is to build a multi-million-dollar company to fulfill it.
Infinitely easier.
And the biggest trap, the ultimate destroyer of this internal peace, is what the text identifies as constant comparison. We've talked about game theory. Well, constant comparison is a game you literally cannot win. It is a treadmill with no off switch.
None at all.
Because the world is too big. There is always going to be someone with more specific knowledge, more permissionless leverage, a bigger audience, more equity, or a faster compounding curve. If your internal happiness is predicated on being at the absolute top of the hierarchy, you are doomed to misery because the hierarchy is infinite.
So you have to actively cultivate gratitude for the present moment to anchor yourself.
You learn to actually enjoy the wealth and the freedom you've built rather than immediately using it to fund an even larger, more stressful set of artificial desires.
Precisely. The ambition builds the engine, but the gratitude is the steering wheel that keeps you from driving it off a cliff.
I love that.
And this synthesis of the external mechanics of wealth and the internal mechanics of happiness brings us to the ultimate unifying conclusion of the text. All of this, the specific knowledge, the permissionless leverage, the long-term compounding, the first principles thinking, and the rigorous cultivation of inner peace, it isn't just a random collection of life hacks. It all points toward one singular overriding objective.
And that objective is freedom. That is the ultimate goal. The text brings it all together by revealing that wealth should never be pursued just for the sake of accumulating a high score on a bank ledger or buying status symbols to impress people you don't even like.
Oh, what a waste of energy.
Truly, wealth is just a tool, and its primary, most sacred function is to buy autonomy. It is to buy absolute control over your own time and your own energy. Success in the worldview presented by this text, is not defined by external validation or financial achievement. True success is simply the freedom to live life entirely on your own terms.
If we synthesize this entire journey, the roadmap becomes incredibly clear. You stop playing the zero-sum games of status and start playing positive-sum games of value creation. You identify and refine your specific knowledge, the unique things that feel like play to you but look like work to others.
Right.
You step up and take accountability for your judgment to capture the equity. You apply massive permissionless leverage through code or media to decouple your time from your output. You allow the results of that leverage and the trust in your relationships to compound over the long term.
Letting it build.
Yes. You use the resulting wealth to buy back your time and establish your total autonomy. And crucially, throughout that entire process, you rigorously practice the skill of happiness, reducing your desires and remaining grounded in the present to ensure that when you finally win your freedom, you actually have the mental capacity to enjoy it.
It is a phenomenal manual for a well-lived life, and it fundamentally challenges the default industrial-era scripts we are all handed at birth. It demands that we take ownership, not just of our labor and our output, but of our very minds.
It's a complete paradigm shift.
It really is. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with one final thought to mull over as you go about your day, something that builds on everything we've unpacked here today. If wealth is defined as independent assets that earn while you sleep, and if happiness is defined as the practice skill of wanting less and being fiercely present, what is the truest, most accurate measure of your success isn't the size of your bank account or your job title, but simply the percentage of your day that belongs entirely to you. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep learning, keep questioning the default scripts, and keep thinking independently.